The latest death of an American hostage at the hands of ISIS, Kayla Mueller, reminding the nation of just how very difficult these horrific situations are for the families of the innocent victims. Kayla was working as a humanitarian aid worker when she was kidnapped in Syria in 2013. Last year, American journalists James Foley and Stephen Sotloff both publicly murdered by ISIS after being held captive by Islamic extremists. 40-year-old freelance video reporter James Foley was in northern Syria when he was abducted by terrorists Thanksgiving Day 2012. He was held for nearly 2 years before his murder. U.S. Special Forces failed to rescue Foley and other American hostages in July of last year. James Foley's parents, Diane and John Foley, join me now live on the set. And thank you both for being with us.
Thank you, Greg.
I know how very difficult this may be for you to talk about it, but we do appreciate it, and we offer our sincere condolences.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Catherine Herridge, who's been all over this story, tells us that the White House knew about the precise location of where at least 8 Western hostages, including your son, was being held, but they sat on that specific intel. They even knew down to the precise building, but they sat on it. What's your reaction? What can you tell us?
Well, all I know, communication was very poor. That's one of the things. So the government really wasn't telling us anything. So it was all classified. So all I know is what I was told by the French hostages who came out in March of 2014. The 4 of them had a lot of very specific information for our government. So I don't know how soon our government engaged with the French government and those. I do know from the FBI that our agents had difficulty accessing those hostages.
Mr. Foley, do you believe that your son might be alive today if the Obama administration had acted on the intelligence when they had it instead of waiting for at least 7 weeks, maybe longer?
Well, that's the $64,000 question. It's hard to have a definitive answer on that. It's just hard to answer. I mean, the problem is how would that have taken shape? We don't negotiate. We don't pay ransom. So that would have only left a military intervention.
A rescue operation, which was eventually conducted, but apparently ISIS learned about a rescue attempt before.
Well, I mean, I don't know that either, but when all of the European hostages were released, it only left the Americans and the British people still in captivity. The ISIS group is evil and vicious, but I don't think they're stupid, and I think that they must have understood that eventually an attempt to extricate the hostages was going to come, because that was our mode of operation.
National Security Advisor Ben Rhodes said, "I can assure you we have done everything." And then there is this statement from President Obama. Take a listen.
It's as tough as anything that I do, having conversation with parents who understandably want, by any means necessary, for their children to be safe. And we will do everything we can, short of providing an incentive for future Americans to become.
Do you think he did everything?
It was very hard to know. We didn't feel Jim was a priority, even though we were told that from the very beginning that he was, and just to trust that everything was being done. But we don't have much evidence of that, mainly because of very poor communication. No one seemed to be accountable for these 4 Americans who were captive together. And no one could give us answers.
I just want to make very clear that we were very grateful for those soldiers who were participating in that raid, because it's obviously very dangerous on their part.
Absolutely.
And we're grateful for that. Again, I think it was very late in the game, so the result speaks for itself. There was nobody home.
Is there a part of you that says, well, wait a minute, if they had acted on the intelligence during the course of 7 weeks before ISIS found out about a potential rescue, they could have gotten them all out and safe and alive?
In all honesty, I think ISIS was always aware of a potential for a rescue. I think that my own opinion is that the European nations were negotiating to get their hostages out, and I believe that under those circumstances they did not want a military intervention until those young men were released in order to protect them physically. So I don't think there was ever a point where ISIS didn't expect some form of intervention at some point.
With respect to our government and their lack of communication, as you expressed it, are you left frustrated, disappointed, angry?
Very disappointed. Jim, counted on our government to get them home. That's what all the hostages say. Jim was very hopeful and confident that our government would find a way. We don't want Jim to have died in vain, Greg. And that's why we've established a foundation so that we can encourage really a reflection on the American hostage policy, definite improvement in communication all around, and collaboration with our allies, if you will.
We're specifically looking for the establishment of a dedicated hostage unit, which will have the ability to coordinate all aspects of the government and focus on the release of the particular hostage. And in that unit, we would hope very much for frequent, concise, and meaningful communication. The trip along the way is as important as the end result. And we don't feel that we were part of the answer. We felt often part of the problem.
All right. Diane and John Foley, our condolences again, and thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.